All these distractions. Let's discuss the new body cam footage that's circulating everywhere.
Let's listen to Pavarotti.
Pavarotti.
Pavarotti?
Pavarotti.
He gives me chills.
Let's listen to Pavarotti.
Hello. Welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. Now, I'm sure everybody has seen the new body cam footage that's going around with the incident that happened on the WSU campus. Another distraction in the case. However, after deep diving, this distraction, although it has absolutely nothing to do with Bryan Kohberger or the events that happened on King Road, it is a possibility that it could be used as a dastardly deed of the prosecution and law enforcement in the case that they built against Bryan Kohberger. And when I say the case that they built, you got to understand how this thing works. Once they arrested Bryan Kohberger, then the process of case building began. And that's why you see all of the warrants that happen post his arrest. Building a case is similar to building a house. Now, if the foundation of the case is poor, much like a house, then that house will not stand. Their foundation is very poor, but they still build the house regardless of how poor the foundation is. And their modus operandi, once they have the foundation built, whether it is a good foundation or not, is to put all the other pieces of the house together. And just like any house, every little piece is important. For example, if you built a house and everything was perfect and you got to the roof and you just didn't put that on, the final sheathing, then the first rainstorm, everything in the house would be ruined. So while they are building a shabble of a house that will fall, they're still building it nonetheless. And when you look at this incident that happened on the WSU campus, by them actually associating Kohberger as a person of interest, then it starts to become apparent what those Rule 404B motions may entail. They're going to try to paint a picture. They're going to try to add, they're going to try to add things like this to that house they've built during the trial process, if it's allowed by the judge. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, but Pavarotti, they would have to have Kohberger in the area during the time. Well, there is a remote possibility that they could do that after doing some research. I don't believe he was, but there is a remote possibility that he was in the area during the time, which absolutely has nothing to do with the incident over in WSU. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. And it has nothing to do with the incident on King Road either, because if you use one set of logic, you can't ignore it and use the same set of logic for other circumstances. Just can't. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But after doing some researching, I dove into the schedule of WSU, and I did find an obscure passage that there was some type of an event with the criminology department in October of 2021. Let's take a look. Message from the chair. Welcome to Criminal Justice News. The WSU Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology was granted independent department status within the university in the fall of 2011. While it had been independent before and continually graduated students under one banner or another since 1943, making it one of the longest serving such units in the country, the 10-year milestone our department reached last fall was worth celebrating all year long. especially after 2 years of pandemic restrictions. In October of 2021, we hosted an open house event where we welcomed everyone to our still newish accommodations in Wilson Short Hall. A number of our undergraduate alumni came to visit, including Lynn Pochert, class of 1964. Then we celebrated with several of our graduate alumni at the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences annual meeting in Las Vegas. To round out the year of celebrations, we enjoyed seeing everyone in person again during our first post-pandemic award ceremony in April. But it's right here where it says in October of 2021, we hosted an open house event where we welcomed everyone to our still newish accommodations in Wilson Short Hall. Now, we don't know if Bryan Kohberger attended that event, but it is quite possible, since they've listed him as a person of interest in that case, that they have verified that he attended that event, which has absolutely nothing to do with what happened on the WSU campus. However, it does start to bring up the relevance of the 404B hearings that were threatened by the prosecution in one of the Kohberger hearings in the past. And I want to get out in front of this because I know the guilters are going to be all over it. You see, when you look at the 404B in the Idaho criminal rules, you'll see number 2 is permitted uses. Notice in a criminal case, this evidence may be admissible for another purpose, such as proving motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake, or lack of accident. In a criminal case, the prosecutor must A, file and serve reasonable notice of the general nature of any such evidence that the prosecutor intends to offer at trial, and do so reasonably in advance of trial, or during trial if the court for good cause shown excuses lack of pretrial notice. It's that last part that really makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because the prosecution can actually bring this up at trial if the judge allows it. And here's the bad part. They will not go into the details of the incident that clearly proves that Kohberger had nothing to do with it. They will just list the fact that it was an incident similar in nature and that he was a person of interest. And that will be all they need to infect the jury's mind with Kohberger is a serial guy doing this stuff. And the reason that I bring this up is because I know that the guilters are already making their thumbnails for the 404B in this matter, because they have in the past accused Kohberger of the 404B violation with the lady that they, he put the cameras in her apartment. That must be the 404B. There was a rumor that somebody broke into the chem lab. That had to be Kohberger. That's the rule 404B. So folks, you get ready. The guilters will have a thumbnail out accusing Kohberger of this being the 404B hearing that the prosecution threatened Kohberger with during one of the hearings. So I wanted to get out in front of this because it is a dastardly deed by the prosecution if they try to pull this either in a pretrial motion or by bringing it up during trial, because again, they're not going to go over the facts of the incident. They'll just go over the similarities of the incident and the fact that Kohberger was listed as a person of interest, and that will be a damning thing in the trial. If they were to go into the details of the incident, then they would know it has absolutely nothing to do with Kohberger or the actual atrocity on King Road. Now, I'm not going to give this thing any more legs than I have to. I know I'm giving it some legs just by addressing it in this video, but I think it's necessary. But I'm not going to show any part of that video. But I'll tell you the finer points, and we can eliminate it from there. This young lady, roughly the same ages as the victims on King Road, She's in her bedroom roughly at 3:30, and a guy comes out of the closet with a kitchen knife, like a little steak knife, certainly not a K-bar. And she reaches up with her little young lady legs and kicks the guy and knocks him about, it seems like about 5 feet back into the closet. And the guy gets up and takes off running. And as the law enforcement are taking her statement, she makes the suggestion that the guy was a gnome, right? A little bitty gnome, short guy. Okay. And the law enforcement's response to this was very interesting. They didn't have much of a response other than to flirt with the girls. But I believe that was the case because they made the statement of, well, I mean, if you kicked the guy and he jumped up and took off running, and I don't think he's that much of a danger. Well, I mean, that's an idiotic statement on their part, but in a way it is true. Now, when you look at the description of Bryan Kohberger, I mean, Kohberger is 6'2", probably 185. I'm 6'2", should be 205. Right now I'm about 215, but after the holidays, I'll get back to my prime weight. We like to eat around the holidays. But you're not going to mistake Kohberger or myself with a gnome, okay? So that eliminates him as having anything to do with that incident as well. However, they're not going to try the facts of that incident if it's brought up in a 404B hearing or brought up at trial. They'll just discuss the facts that Kohberger was listed as a person of interest, I assure you. So it is a dastardly deed by law enforcement and the prosecution in building their case. That's why it needs to be we need to get out in front of this thing. But in the same respect, you can't say it's exculpatory evidence. You can't say that, it happened at 3:30 a.m. in the same general area. It was the same circumstances. This is exculpatory to Kohberger. You can't do that because this guy was a gnome with a steak knife and he was kicked back by the young lady and he ran out of the place. It is, you've got to look at it from this perspective. None of us believe DM. However, if this was the case on King Road and it was this same assailant, then everything that we have learned about DM would go out the window, wouldn't it? Because if this was a random event with this assailant, then you would have to believe DM's statement. And by believing her statement, she would have had to have seen the perpetrator. And the description she gave of the perpetrator, of 5'10" or taller, athletically built but not muscular with bushy eyebrows, you would have to then believe her statement if this was the facts. And that statement of that perpetrator does not match the gnome in the event on WSU campus. So nothing to see here, folks. It had nothing to do with, one had nothing to do with the other. And if you want my personal opinion, they listed the little Spanish guy downstairs as a person of interest, and they had a little bit of evidence that he may have done that in the past. And I can tell you, I have relatives that are in the Spanish community, love them to death. And I know that when there is no reason for them to not understand you, they could speak perfect English. But if they don't want to respond to something, they magically forget their language. I mean, they just, English is, what? I don't understand. Yeah. And that was the response when they were interviewing that guy was, I don't speak any English. I don't understand. Yeah, he understood. He understood everything that was being said to him. So there's your guy right there, in my opinion. But trying to use that situation and listing Kohberger as a person of interest, if the judge allows it into the trial, then you won't get to hear the facts of those circumstances. All you'll get to hear is Kohberger may have done it before. He's a person of interest in this other matter, and it's very similar to the King Road incident. Dastardly deeds, I'm telling you. But I wanted to throw my 2 cents in to negate this story relevant to the King Road atrocity. It has nothing to do with it. Nothing. What went on at the King Road atrocity, we all know. We all know now. But anyway, I've got another video that I'm going to bring to you this evening, and it is a eye popper, and it relates to Bryan Kohberger and why law enforcement was seeking him in this investigation, and I assure you they were, and why my theory on Kohberger being the fall guy holds even more water now. But please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, criticisms. Till next time, Pavarotti's out.